Welcome, everybody, to the Coach Brew podcast. Very special episode today because, well, I don't do a lot of interviews. Why don't I do a lot of interviews? Because most people aren't great interviewees, aren't that interesting, don't know how to tell a story, and just use a lot of business jargon, same old jargon everybody else seems to use. But today, I am joined by an outstanding couple, a family business, two just fascinating people, JW and Jody Brooks. And they are in, this is an international interview because I'm in Portland, Maine, and they're in another country down in Texas. And JB and Jody, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, it is a pleasure to have you join me. Thanks for making time. I feel like I should be the offspring of the two of you. I know that sounds totally weird and awkward because we just met, but what I mean by that is if you put the two of you together, your interests combined are my interests. Jody, you're a very competitive horseback rider. I love horseback riding. You're a business owner. JW is a master craftsman, an artist, and a musician. We'll get into that shortly. And you take all those things and put them together, and that's kind of me minus all of that talent. So I just find you guys fascinating, and just want to talk to you a little bit about your journey and kind of how you ended up where you are doing what you are. And for all of our listeners, Jody and JW Brooks are the owners of the JW Brooks Custom Hat Company, making what I would call the Rolls Royce of cowboy hats.
Thank you.
There is no comparison. There is like whatever is second place is a distant second in terms of quality craftsmanship and fashionability. And that isn't even an exaggeration by any stretch, because I will say this, having just been down in Texas, JW, I was at a hat shop. I don't know if Jody told you this. I told Jody this. And I was at a hat shop and I asked about your hats. And one of the hat shapers, who I wasn't even talking to, immediately spun his head around. And he's like, you know those guys? Oh my God, they have the best sweatbands ever. It's like the most comfortable hat. So when you are getting compliments from an industry peer, that's when you know you got something.
Right. Well,
So
thank you. I appreciate
props.
that. Yes, thank you. Well, it's always good to hear that. You don't always hear the good from people, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So love to just kind of hear your backstories, and we'll start with Jody. I started horseback riding at an early age, and I get the feeling you did the same thing. And I'm always curious, when people perform at a high level and enjoy what they do, I'm always curious how they got started and where that competitive DNA was formed at an early age. So Jody, could you tell us a little bit about how you got started riding and just kind of early experience?
Sure. I grew up riding horses. I got a photograph of me. I was probably 9-10 months old. My grandfather sold me on a pony that he bought for me, and I think it started there. And my dad trained and rode horses in North Carolina, and so we always had horses at our house. And I was telling you earlier that there were three of us girls, and so we always fought over. We didn't have the money for all three of us to have one, so we always fought over who was going to get to ride the horse that day, or for whatever time period. And and we all showed. My dad showed, and showed horses, and then we grew up, obviously going to the horse show with him, and then they had this little class called Tots to Ride, and that me and my sister would show in at the same time. And so I think a lot of the competitiveness was just coming from competing with my own sister.
Sure.
Who could have the best ride or who could win the most ribbons, or whatever. So
sibling rivalry is a powerful thing.
You just said a mouthful right there. So I think that's where the competitiveness, the competitive nature came from. But as far as just, having a love for the animal, I've always I'm an animal person anyway. I tend to really, it doesn't really matter what kind of animal it is. I'm going to love it. And so that's why we have all this little funny farm we've got going on here at the hat shop as well. But no, the animal, just having a bond and relationship with a horse is so special, and brings me a lot of peace and joy, and I can't imagine my life without it.
That's the number one reason why I got back into riding as an adult. We got our kids into it when they were young, and reminded me how much I missed it. I stopped riding in high school when I started playing varsity sports, and wish I never would have stopped. Looking back, at what point did you know, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go compete at the regional, national level? At what point did you know this is for me, and I'm going to kind of build my life around it?
Looking back, I kind of did the same thing you did. I showed horses when I was younger and was pretty successful in that class, that little Tots to Ride class. And then I did the lead line, and with another friend of mine at a young age. And then, then we get in high school and college, we just kind of get into other things. And so when I graduated college, and I still kind of trail rode on the weekends and did some things like that for fun. But when I was a paralegal for 15 years, and I think when I got my own money and started buying my own horses and looking at, what else I could do with them, I actually went to a rein cow horse show in South Georgia and just fell in love with the sport that weekend and decided that's what I wanted to do. And that was hard because I'd never, worked cows like that before. We'd round cows up with some friends of ours, but not like that sport, and I was just amazed by that. And I fell head over heels in love with that sport. And that's what got me back into showing. So I actually started back showing probably when I was 26 or 27. And then decided I really liked showing that. And then I liked showing versatility horses. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I started.
You've always been an incredibly competitive person, and this just, I imagine, really brings it out. And
Sure.
Now entrepreneurship is a whole other animal, no pun intended, when it comes to competition, which brings me to your husband, JW. Can you give us a little bit of your origin story and kind of how you got started? Maybe not even necessarily in the industry, but just,
well, our family grew up around more of the rodeo industry. And so, again, we were always around horses and always had some growing up as well. And I thought I knew everything about horses and livestock, and I was, I knew it all until I met Jody and realized I really didn't know anything. So she's pretty modest in the fact that she is very, very talented with horses, and has obviously paid a lot more attention to them than I have. And I think that women kind of tend to do that in general with horses. But I
was just going to say, get married, and we all realize how little we knew before.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. I thought I knew it. It actually did take a few years of arguing back and forth before I realized she was actually right, and I didn't know as much as I thought. But anyway, it's all worked out for the best.
Now I got it on video. So
right.
Now everybody knows.
It's perfect.
Yeah, if I have a question, I ask Jody for sure.
No, but like as far as his singing goes, like that's an amazing story, actually.
Well, you're
kind of like JW. The way I would describe you is you make the Dos Equis guy seem kind of boring.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you just said it.
The most interesting man in the world is actually J.W. Brooks. Rodeo industry, music, and then obviously, master craftsman, working with hats, creating hats. Like, let's talk about that a little bit. Your musical career, where did that get started? It get started just as a function of, being around the rodeo industry, having an interest in, like, what got you started on that path with music?
Not really, not till much later. I mean, I've always loved music, and of course you were raised around. I didn't know there was anything besides country music until I was about 18 years old. So that was just, and I've always liked it and enjoyed it and sang and whatever, just as far as around the house and so forth. But I never thought for a second about having a musical career in anything. So I definitely went down that path of being an artist, and I was doing that right out of high school and during high school, actually.
Where'd you grow up? Because I know you're a Texas transplant. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in Durango, Colorado, and so in Durango was where I spent probably the majority of my youth. I mean, we did move around a lot. My dad opened Western wear stores, so we moved to, we were in Sheridan, Wyoming, and Billings, Montana, and Yuma, Arizona. We did a lot of moving around, but I ended up going back.
You picked the most beautiful places out west to live. Wow.
Oh yeah, no, it was fun. I mean, being a little bit of a hobo that way was definitely fun, and meeting people, and of course, the more you have to do that, the better you get at adapting and being able to socialize and meet people and so forth. So I think that all plays into it a little bit. But no, I was drawing full time, doing a lot of commission pieces for people in Durango when I was right out of high school. And Kevin O'Farrell, the hat maker there, he's gone now. He's passed away, but he was pretty iconic in the industry as far as custom hat makers go. And he asked me to come. I had actually done a drawing for him. We traded out. He built me a hat, and I did a drawing for him, and we ended up. He said, "Do you want to come down and shape some hats for me?" And I said yes. And so he never fired me, and I never quit, and we just kind of became friends. And I worked for him for several years, and then I ended up moving to Scottsdale and went to work for Aztec Hat Company down there. And I worked for them for about 3 or 4 years, and kind of paying my dues as far as learning, but I don't know that I'd ever really had a path that I was on that I was certain of. I just knew that I enjoyed what I was doing. The art was a lot of fun. I was proud of what I did, but it was boring. You spend hours and hours and hours alone, just working away. And the hat deal was just funner to me. It was, you're meeting like-minded people, and you're creating something that you're proud of and they're happy to have. So that was just, it was just a lot more fun. And that's kind of what took me there. It wasn't until later on, I think I was about 33, which is way too late to start a music career, in my opinion. But anyway, a friend signed me up for a contest. It was that Nashville Star. I don't know if you remember it, but it was.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my friends hosted Nashville Star for a couple seasons. Troy Coleman, Cowboy Troy.
Oh yeah. We made hats for Cowboy Troy.
Nice.
And but we anyway, they signed me up for that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so stupid. I can't believe it. And anyway, long story short, I ended up winning. For this, obviously the state of Arizona there, that whole area. And then when we went to California and got on the TV portion, I ended up losing out there, which I always say, well, I was on the same year Miranda Lambert was, and she also lost, so I don't feel too bad about it. But
no, I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
You're in good company.
Right.
But when I came back to Arizona from losing out there in the house band at Mr. Lucky's, which is a big club there, big country club bar there in Arizona, they asked if I would come sing for them, be their lead guy. And so I was like, sure. And gosh, well, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but bottom line was it was just a hoot and so much fun and kind of like a dream come true in a way. Although there was times I thought, oh, this is going to be my new path in life. And, but once I hit 40, I was like, I don't think anybody wants to watch a 40-year-old man sing anymore. So anyway, and it was a lot of late nights. I played for 7 years with those guys. And,
sure.
For the first probably 3 or 4 years there, we were playing 5 nights a week. And I'm trying to, build cowboy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was super tough. So I was glad to hang it up when I did, and glad I got to do it. So.
Well, you were building houses too at the same time.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of iron.
You had a lot going on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize that you had started out shaping hats at another hat shaper.
Oh yeah.
How many different places did you work? How many different hat companies did you work, inside of before you decided to take the plunge and go out on your own? And the reason I ask that is I think it's, it's kind of like the lost art of apprenticeship that you just don't see anywhere anymore. People aren't apprenticing like back in the day in the arts and in the trades. And I'm always just curious, like people's introduction to that, and then how long before you started to get the itch to kind of do your own thing, and why?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we don't talk about it outside of our family much, but we've had this same discussion a million times, because you're right. I mean, nobody wants to apprentice. Nobody wants to learn. They all want to own the company, start the company, and be a winner tomorrow. And I have people, to this day calling for, wanting a job or whatever. And you feel them out and you realize that they don't really want to learn. You know what I mean? They just kind of want to learn.
That's what happens when you stop keeping score in youth sports and everybody gets a trophy.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
No, I worked for O'Farrell's for probably 4 years. I went to Arizona, worked for Aztec Hats for probably about 4 years. And then I went to work. I opened a shop, which was kind of my first, dip into the water by myself. It was on his dime, but I got to open up this whole shop inside this Western wear store for a guy. So that helped me tremendously, because I was able to make a few mistakes on his dollar and learn from him too on the business side of it. But so that was basically it. After that, I knew I kind of wanted to do it on my own. So I picked up another night job. I was lumping trailers for Yellow Freight at night and making extra money so I could buy hat equipment. And
absolutely.
Yep. So we did that, and then just started doing it on my own. And honestly, I can say I was obviously very, very scared to do it, step out on my own, but I've never had a year that we've not increased and bettered ourselves every year, financially and with numbers with, customers and everything. So we've been very fortunate that way.
That's phenomenal. And especially when you consider, like you said, stepping out on your own, the equipment, the overhead, the cost of goods, particularly with, we're not talking about straw hats that you get off the rack at Cavender's, folks, or any other retailer. We're talking about this is very much a premium brand, kind of a boutique brand where your hats can be hard to find. And that leads me to my next question. Like, when and why did you decide to be a premium brand and just have that kind of level of exclusivity where, you know, you're not just going to find that on the shelf of any old place? And I have to imagine there's some strategy involved there, because, like, you know, and let me frame it this way. Like, everybody talks about being different, but very few brands walk that talk. You really walk that talk by, you know, like doubling down on, we are going to be the most premium product in our space. And A, it takes courage. B, it takes resources. And that's not something anyone really, I don't think, enters lightly into unless they're massively independently wealthy going into business. But like, what was the strategy behind that?
I think that between the two of us, we might have two separate answers. But I'll let Jade up.
Well,
what he thinks.
First of all, I've never had. You want to know my strategy? I'll tell it to you. You might want to get a pen and jot this down. It's very, very important. I was on the Kevin Costner "If you build it, they will come" strategy, right? I mean, I just honestly, and I think it was just an artistic mindset. My whole life, kind of growing up in the art world. I thought, you know, if you make something really, really good and you make it really, really nice, people are gonna buy it, and they're gonna want it, and they're gonna want to spend money, you know. And I mean, it just that was my philosophy, and it's terrible. I mean, in a lot of respects. I mean, maybe good in some, but it really wasn't until Jody and I got together that changed, because we work together, but we don't work together, because we would fight probably all the time. Because well, she's always on the computer and in the house. I'm usually in the shop, and it works out really well, because I mean, you know, like I said, my mindset is I want to build a hat for everybody on the planet, and if we can just get away with doing that for free, that would be great. I don't care, you know.
Yes, that's his. Really, that is.
Yeah, I like what I do, and I want everybody to have the best, and I don't really care about the money. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's not the forethought in my mind. And so when Jody came into my life, I mean, she was like, yeah, I get it, but you need to make some money. You need to, you know, you're gonna need to pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
So it was a good and fantastic, you know, team effort,
well,
and always has been.
Yeah, I think I recognized very quickly when we met how talented and J-Dub was. You know, no matter what he was doing, he does it well. Like, if you've seen his artwork, it can be in Jackson Hole. If you hear him sing, it's like he should be on the radio. I mean, it's crazy the amount of talent he has. And then he's making these incredible hats, and I just recognize his talent. I think as an artist, you know, and I don't want to speak for every artist, but I think from an artist mentality, you don't recognize how good your art is, no matter what that art is. Like, it could be pencil art, or it could be making cowboy hats, or, you know, creating some kind of invention. I mean, all that makes you creative and an artist. And I think sometimes artists have a hard time putting a value on their craft. And so,
well, there's the reason that the expression is so true, starving artist, you know?
Yes. And so, and I think
so caught up in the making that they don't really assess the value sometimes.
Right. And I can tell you, you know, it is important to J-Dub. I mean, as far as like, when he said he'd like everybody to have one of his hats, he's not joking about that. Like, he would give his hat away. But I think, you know, obviously when I stepped in, I you know, obviously we can't do that, but, you know, there is value to it. And there's a reason why you want a hat from an artist, a Western artist that has been doing this for 3 years now. And he's not only an artist, but he's an innovator too in this industry. Like, he's constantly thinking up new ways to make a better hat. I mean, they've been making hats the same way for what, 200 years now?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the whole process has kind of, been there and has been around forever. But Jada was so innovative in stepping up our game, and then you got to look at part of it became a necessity. We got so busy and started getting so popular that, we had to step up our game too, as far as that goes. I mean, there's only one of J-Dub, so
yeah,
you're getting what you pay for. And, but, we appreciate, all the compliments, all the things that, people say and do, but really we just do it because we love it and we're able to make a living at it. And that's awesome. It's all awesome.
And one of the things I think that will really resonate for my listeners and anyone who's read, my book Stadium Status is, you had mentioned the Kevin Costner theory. If you build it, they will come. I think just about every excellent creation by great creators has followed that path. And two of the stories I've shared are, the creator of one of the greatest, possibly the greatest bluegrass guitar in the world, the guy by the name of Dana Bourgeois, up here in Lewiston, Maine, in the basement in this tiny little mill, and he just makes the most world-class guitars, sourcing wood from like all corners of the planet, and he's on this eternal quest to make a better guitar. Jack Marucci, if you ever watched a Major League Baseball game, you've seen a Marucci baseball bat being used. That was a guy who was an athletic trainer at Louisiana State University and just started out with a lathe and a piece of wood in his tool shed in his backyard because his kid didn't want to play with an aluminum bat. He wanted to play with the same thing the pros use. So his dad just made him a bat and kept trying to improve on that. Got to the point where college players used it. And then pro players not only use the bat, but instead of being sponsored and paid to use it, they invested in the company.
Wow.
And that tells you, like, you're onto something excellent. When other brands then try and duplicate what you're doing, and most industries are copycat industries.
Yeah.
But your ability to be on the front edge of the leading edge of that curve is critical, and you guys are doing that. Case in point, the sweatbands, for example, which I just find fascinating. Let me ask you this regarding the cowboy hat. It is said that it is the single most recognizable piece of clothing on the planet. Why is it so special? Why do you think it stands out as a point of envy to other people?
I think it's just a reminder of being, let me see how to put this, free, independent, a pioneer, and not someone that's just fallen in line. I mean, that's me. I mean, you mean there is not a Western movie or anything you can ever watch that doesn't show people trying to better themselves. Moving west, whether they're panning for gold or starting plowing a field or what. I mean, it's all about the American dream, I guess, to a certain degree. I mean, and this is just my opinion. I don't know the answer, but I think that's a big part of it. I think that as a whole, that it's iconic in that way. I mean, people view it as the West, independence and freedom, and I mean that's how I see it.
Well, I think too that when I think, especially when I was a kid, because I grew up in Georgia, I didn't grow up back west, where Texas and further west. A cowboy was a symbol of like good and everything good. They slept under the stars, they sang these wonderful songs, and they rode their special horses.
Manners and morals.
They had manners and morals, and Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, and who wouldn't gravitate toward that,
I think particularly today, you see the popularity of like Yellowstone and things like that. it's really nostalgia. Like people looking back fondly on, frankly, I'll say it, what was probably a better time when our country and people had more of a moral compass, you know?
Sure.
So yeah, that really makes a ton of sense. Thank you.
Well, and then people can handle their business, you know, between each other instead of getting attorneys involved and, oh, that hurt my feelings. And now, you know, or it's gotten ridiculous, you know, back then. And even in Yellowstone, I think people yearn for that, like just being able to handle your own business the way you could without getting sued or, you know, like all this.
Sure.
I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you know.
No, I agree. Absolutely. Have a better, simpler time.
Yeah.
Where there actually was accountability.
Accountability. Thank you. That's where I was trying to go with that. Yeah. Like there's accountability for what you say, what you do, and how you act. And, you know, if you didn't, somebody's going to call you out on it, and you may not like that, but it would get handled, you know?
Sure. What, speaking of handling your business and getting called out, you know, what are some of the joys and challenges of being a family business? Because, you know, it's such a unique environment, and there are a lot of family business owners that listen to my show. And, like, it is a very, very different thing because it seems like you're always on unless you're very intentional about not always being on. You know, you bring home to work and you bring work home with you.
Yes.
How do you find that separation or balance, and like what are the real rewards for you?
Well, you kind of summed it up. I mean, in a way, I mean, because that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, I'm no different than anybody else that owns their own business, whether you're a plumber or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, your hours are long. You work twice as hard as anybody else that punches the clock, in my opinion, because you're exactly right. You bring it home. It's always there. Super tough on that level. We had a retail store in Scottsdale, and for a while there, and after we moved out to Texas, I said I'd never do that again, because the nicest part about what we do now is to be able to stop making hats for 5 minutes and talk to my son, or go, you know, help Jody load some horses or hook up a trailer or whatever, and not, you know what I mean? And so the freedom to be able to do those things is fantastic. And I love that aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, you were 100% right before. I mean, you bring it home, the hours are long, it is what it is. And you know, why you keep going? I mean, I guess I've always been that guy anyway. You know, I mean, I've never been a clock puncher. I think I'd shoot myself, but I like being independent. I like being my own boss. I may not be the best one, but I don't really care to be told what to do, even though I have thousands of customers every year that tell me what to do to a certain degree.
Sure.
But yeah, it's pretty much the same as every other business that's out there, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love that I can go and show my horses at a show, and someone can talk to me about a hat or how to get one, or how to order one, or they want to order one. And it's so awesome to be in an industry where I can be showing and still be making money. And
yes, I was going to ask you about that. You're kind of the product of the product in a way.
Yes.
She's the show pony.
Whether I like it or not.
What's your best marketing? And the reason I ask you that is I find your brand to be, you know, in your category, so unique compared to so many others. You're very much a boutique brand, very much the premium brand that is hard to find, literally. And if you could tell us a little bit about that, like what's your best marketing and sort of some of that maybe secret sauce around being exclusive and frankly kind of hard to find, you know?
Well, I will let Jody answer that because she's the one that handles 90% of that kind of stuff. However, my personal opinion is that you cannot, and it goes back to what we were talking about before with apprentices. You cannot replace years with anything else. I mean, the fact that I've been doing it for 33 years means a lot. And because when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, I mean, I thought I was the best hat maker on the planet. And of course, you look back and you're like, wow, I wasn't as good as I thought I was, right? But it was irrelevant because you're still a young young kid, and you're trying hard to be a player. And honestly, it wasn't. I mean, I've always done well, and I'm not trying to take that away, but I would say in the last 15 years of the 33 is where I've really started noticing the recognition of the time that I put in. I always strive to build the best product. And obviously it's gotten better over the years, but I just think that there's no substitute for that. I think that the years are the most important thing as far as, you can't take it away. I mean, people are going to talk, and Jody will get into that probably with you, but we were doing print ad and all that kind of stuff early on when we first got together, a lot of print ad, and we couldn't track it. It was very hard to track. We didn't know if it was working or not working. And so Jody said, we're going to pull all this money back out of print ads and we're going to put it into people. And so, we're going to start using, putting it on this person or that person and using some endorsers to kind of get the word out. And so that's something you can track, and that's something that did work. So I think between that and the product being good and the years of being in business, that's the key. And that's hard to teach someone that's 20 that wants to do it themselves. You want to say, look, go put in 15 or 20 years working for some other companies, and you'll get it, right? And then you'll have a head start. But like you said earlier, nobody really wants to do that anymore. But
and I think it's getting harder and harder because you look at, and I'm going to sound like that old get off my lawn guy, but you look at, quote, kids today, and it's very easy to hit reset on a video game and just start over. And if things aren't going your way, you just close out the browser and hit reset, and quitting is easy. It's gotten easier and easier to quit and just go do something else, as opposed to putting in sweat equity and learning long term. Instant gratification has kind of made the master craftsman more and more of a unicorn.
Yeah.
Well, I think, today, when we've kind of sat back and watched this, it's been interesting in the last probably 5 years how everybody thinks they're a hat maker right now. They can get online and learn off YouTube how to make a hat. That does not make you a good custom hat maker, it just makes you a hat maker. It takes the time. You've got to put in the time and get the experience, and you can't just because you've been doing it for 5 years does not make you a premium hat maker. But it's hard to tell people that.
I mean, we were all there once. I mean, it's not like I wasn't in the same boat. The only difference was I didn't mind paying my dues with other people
and working and
learning
and being humble about it.
I didn't mind that at all. I mean, I knew what it was going to take for me to try to step out on my own, and I didn't want to do that. And I mean, I definitely wanted to learn as much as I could. So
there's just no fast tracking a craft, I don't think. And if you do, then you're going to have a subpar product.
What's that? There's an old expression, the 10,000 hour rule, or 10 years. It takes 10 years or 10,000 hours to become an expert. And you talk to anyone that's put in 10 years or 10,000 hours, and they'll say, have I gotten better? Yeah, but I'm really just getting started. And to your point, 33 years in, it wasn't until year 15 or 20 that you really felt like, okay, hey, I'm starting to hit my stride, and
right.
That's
I remember one time we were standing in the booth during NFR, one of our bigger shows, and I looked around and felt that, oh my gosh, I feel like we made it. Like we were so busy and so covered up, and that was only just a few years ago. I mean, and like Jacob said, we've been successful and have grown this company every year, but it's still like, 30 years into it, I was like, or, with J-Dub being into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's finally, like you just have that moment of, wow, all this work, which is like, look, like I felt like, yes, we're accomplished. We've done it. We've done something right.
So, I want to go back, Jody, and I want to go back and ask you, JW had mentioned we pulled the print ads and you said, let's invest in people. What has been your best marketing?
100% our people.
Okay.
I feel like print ads, and there is a place for it, and I'm not totally knocking that at all.
Sure.
But as a small business, initially and still to an extent, I felt like I couldn't see the money. I couldn't see the return on how, you can spend anywhere from $1,500 on up to $5,500 on a print ad, depending on what publication that is. And so that's a lot of money, sometimes. And so I thought, all right, well, instead of spending our money that way, let's put it in fur, in the bodies and hats, and stick them on people that believe in us and support us and
that others
look,
and that others look up to.
Yeah, and I can tell you this, they don't have to be at the top of their game. They do not have to be at the top of the game. But what gets me when somebody, when I'm looking at sponsoring somebody or having somebody endorse us or whatever, is I look at how much do they love our product? Like, are they fans, and how well they hashtag us, and how well they tell everybody they meet how much they love their hat. That's what means the most.
Passion sells. Absolutely.
That's exactly right. And we've endorsed some big names that sent us zero business. Like they're quiet. They just,
like it's almost, they think it's an honor for you to attach yourself to their name. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, nope, that's not how I work. And so I'd take their money and get, that adds a lot for their hat, and I'm sticking on somebody that is just, loves to talk, loves us, loves our hats, doesn't care who they tell it. They'll tell the, janitor to the president of the United States. They're going to talk about our hats. That's the person I want wearing our hats. That's the money I'm going to spend on them.
And they're grateful. They're grateful for the opportunity, and they're proud. Yep.
Yes. Like, and it goes both ways. I want to be able to support them too and celebrate their successes and put them on our page and talk about how well they're doing. So when I look at people, instead of putting on print advertising or things like that, when I'm looking at people, that's what I look at. What can we do together? We're a team. I want you to succeed just as much as I think you want me to succeed. And that's the people I choose to stick, hitch my wagon to.
And I think you guys are, again, at the forefront of this I'll call it a movement, because I believe that's what's happening is, you look at just sort of, there's been a paradigm shift, long form podcasts like what we're doing right now are outperforming and are more popular than, mainstream, like late night shows or, those short little radio interviews you see on your local country station on a morning show or something, because they're real. They're largely unedited.
Yep.
They're authentic, and you get to have an in-depth conversation, and they're nuanced. They're not scrubbed within an inch of their life and clipped and edited sound bites. And I think that's what you're seeing with what you're doing. These are authentic, real people who reflect, what your same values. And absolutely, I just think it's, if you're listening to this, this is the page from their playbook that whatever industry you're in, you want to duplicate in your own and put your own unique spin on, because that is the direction things are going. People crave authenticity across the board with everything. You look at like auto tune and music, video editing, Photoshop, Instagram filters, everything. We're in a world where everything is getting scrubbed within an inch of its life, and no one knows what's real anymore. But being a real person face to face who walks their talk, that's the difference maker. Like, there's no substitute for that.
I agree.
Well, you were talking about that, but it's done the same thing like in the music industry. I always kind of think about that, but back when I was playing, so it was in the 90s, right? And they were, all the labels were trying to sign anybody and everybody, and they'd throw something against the wall and see what stuck, and if it didn't, it was gone. And you know what I mean? And now it seems to me like they're really reverting back to trying to find these triple threat guys, these writers, singers, songwriter, musicians that can back it up. They're not just a face on a microphone singing a song anymore. I mean, these guys are musicians, writers, fantastic. Anyway, that's what I noticed the biggest, especially in Texas, like because they support these country music guys down here, the red dirt that they call it.
You have your own radio chart. It's the only state in the U.S. that has its own chart, music chart. And I would to further your point. I think we've also, because of authenticity, I think we've reached the point where you largely, to be successful, don't even necessarily need a label. You don't need that gatekeeper. Like, I interviewed Aaron Watson a couple of years ago and developed a friendship with him and his management. And, he had #1 album in country music, and he's independent. He is his own record label. He followed that up with having the #2 album that actually outsold his #1 album just 2 years later. No label. And it's because, he's blazing his own trail and, creating a great experience for his fans who really want to champion the cause. And like you said, are outgoing and want to recommend the brand. And that's really what you are when you're an entertainer. You're a brand too, like want to recommend the brand to others. So I just think just the authenticity piece is, it's a huge learning takeaway for everyone.
It is. No, it all ties in. I mean, take, Aaron Watson, for example. I mean, he's independent. He did it on his own using the internet and social media and playing and all that kind of stuff. And jumped out there and was a hit. Right. But it didn't happen overnight for that guy. I mean,
no,
right. I mean, he's a singer, songwriter, musician. So here you got a guy that's worked hard and that's where he's at. Where, like I said, in the 90s, I mean, it was anybody that could carry a tune that had a pretty face. I mean, they just really tried to throw him out there. And that's
the funny thing. I was talking with him at a show, JW, you'll love this. And Out of Style was his one song that got pushed to radio. And he was referred to by Bobby Bones and a bunch of other personalities as an up-and-coming new artist.
Oh, my
and
God.
He just laughed. He's like, if by up-and-coming you mean this is my 11th album, yeah, sure, I'm up-and-coming. Right. He's like, John, I prefer to think of myself slow and steady. I'm like, that's more like it. But yeah, it's just wild,
Oh,
yeah. But I like it. I like the way things are headed.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: you're 30 years in. This is like my $1 million question I love to ask people. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you got started in the business? And if you want to punt the ball over to Jody and let her answer first, that's okay.
That's a hard question.
No. I think I kind of already answered it a little while ago because, again, when you're younger, you're trying to make the best product you can make, and I'll tell you, here's a example that is away from the hat industry. When I was drawing, okay, and I'm painting and drawing, and I'm doing this art, and I mean, I think I'm pretty good, right? I'm a pretty good artist, right? And so I went to a show, and I set up my wares there and had some prints and some pictures, and then, you know, a couple booths down from me is a fella that I knew, and he also did similar medium and everything. So he's sitting down just a few doors from me, and I'm like 21, 22, and he's about 60. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but I am, because I could draw circles around this guy, right? I mean, my art was just, in my personal opinion, 10 times better, right?
In your opinion.
In my opinion, way better. And nobody bought my artwork, and they were buying his. And I was like, you know, I did really stump me for a long time. But it goes back to what I said. You cannot ever take away the years and the experience of those years. And I think that's if you could go back and tell yourself that would be the deal, because when you're 21 and you're trying so hard to make a living doing what you want to do, and it's rough and it's hard at times or whatever, you just got to know that if you hang in there, it's going to pay off. But it's like you said, people are so easily to quit, you know, it's so easy to quit. And they get frustrated and leave what they are doing. And I always knew in my profession, at least in the hat industry, that, you know, I was always coming up with ideas, you know, this idea, that idea. But it was the guy that, you know, I thought, well, hats have been around forever. How do you make a better mousetrap, right? But they do it all the time. I think somebody just came out with a new mousetrap like a year ago. It looks really handy, right? So I'm like, just because you have something that works doesn't mean it can't be better. So.
Absolutely. This might be a little too inside baseball for any of my listeners, but I just want to ask you this because I'm fascinated. You know, it seems like no one's come up with a better mousetrap for the conformator. Isn't that like a 1,000-year-old head measuring, hat sizing device? And why hasn't that evolved, JW?
So you're actually speaking to the guy that evolved it.
Yeah, I evolved it, man.
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me.
Well, they and believe me, I'm not a hat historian, so I can't sit here and tell you. But I mean, I've seen conformers that, you know, have 17 something written on them. I mean, you're right. They've been around for hundreds of years, and then, you know, of course, the thing is they were invented to you know, fit kings and queens with crowns, because those conformer pegs would expand and contract to the person's head shape, and then that would allow them to form that metal so that it was comfortable and blah blah blah. So that's about the extent of my knowledge on that. But I used them for 28 years. I used a conformer, and even then I always thought that it was about an 85-90% accurate device. I mean, it was, the conformator has to be calibrated to the vermilion, and most people's are not calibrated correctly, and they've been swapped around and everything. So anyway, and so when I had the opportunity, when they came out with the augmented reality software, that's what really sparked me. I'm like, gosh, you know, everybody's using this new augmented reality and facial recognition software. There's got to be a way that we can utilize this to come up with a more accurate way to measure somebody's head. I mean, besides making.
You're not going to believe this. That was going to be my exact next question.
Yeah,
that is fascinating.
I put 1 million hours of thought into this stuff, and I mean,
finally got it done.
I mean, and we did. You know, I started down the mold thing years ago.
What'd you do?
Well, I mean, way before the computer augmented reality and stuff, and I was like, okay, if we take this foam and then you put it on your head, and then, you know, it's gonna. I mean, I was just trying to figure out any way to make it better, and this augmented reality just opened up everything, because now, literally, we send a kit in the mail. So another thing was, you know, we were only able to go to a show. I mean, we had to get in front of the customer in order to sell the customer a hat. And now, I mean, we do business all over the world, and it's because I can send a kit in the mail, and they can read through this deal and put this little sock on their head and use the iPhone or, you know, an Android to get a perfect shape on their head, and then they send that to me, and they don't have to send it back in the mail. I mean, that's how simple it is. I mean, you email it to me or text it to me, and I can start building your hat within 5 minutes, right? And it's going to be correct.
So we've gone down a rabbit hole, and I want to make sure people who are listening aren't thinking like, this has nothing to do with me or my business. Well, they're talking about like head shapes and measuring, and it actually has everything to do with you and your business, if you're paying close attention, because what we're doing is we're talking about, you know, someone who has 30 years in the business, still evolving, still generating new ideas and innovating. And if you're not doing that in your industry or your market, you're on the way to extinction. And this is just so impressive.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, my dad used to always get on us kids if we ever used the words, I know. You know, if he'd tell us something, and you said, oh, I know, you're going to get a backhand or something, right? So we just grew up never using that kind of terminology. And when, you know, I'm 51 years old, and I listen to everybody that comes in. I want to know things, you know, and I don't have any problem going, I didn't know that, or how does that work? You're right. I mean, because you have to continue to evolve, and we have a great product. I'm so happy with what we have going on right now. And maybe next year I'll find something that makes it even better. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
And I think that is like success leaves clues in every industry. And to your point you just made, I've always found that the top performers, like the 1%, I don't mean financially, I mean like the 1% most elite in their industry, are the ones paying attention and taking the most notes, because they realize, number one, the margins for success are razor thin. Number two, we're never done learning. We can always get better.
Right.
Without
and I can
fail.
Just and not just from a hat point of view, but from my horse point of view, horse riding point of view, and showing, I got a notebook that I take around everywhere, and I will write in it tidbits of knowledge that I get from other trainers and other riders. Without fail. And so I can go back if I'm having trouble with something in my horsemanship. I can go back and, oh yeah, you know, Ron Rawls said to do this, blah blah blah. I think if you ever get to a point where you're not learning, you're exactly what you said. You just become stagnant and you just stay the same.
This is a great point to reinforce, folks, and why I created what I call my idea journal that's available on my website. Is, you know, it's an intellectual exercise where I write down 10 new ideas, you know, to evolve my business, whether it's marketing, sales, a new product, a new book I want to write, whatever it is, and new ideas every day. And I don't start my actual work day until I've started making that list, and I keep it in my idea journal. And I think everyone in some way, shape, or form ought to be making that list and ought to be writing down ideas, because ideas are currency. And you just saw that with augmented reality in the hat industry. Ideas are currency. You know, when people can't walk into a hat store because there's a pandemic and things are shut down, the ability to send a kit to a customer all over the world and have them send it back on their phone, ideas are currency. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I think that is a great teaching point that we can wrap up on. Tell us a little bit about where people, if they want to get introduced to the Rolls Royce of custom cowboy hats, where do they go? How do they learn more about you? And where can they get one?
So they can go.
This is where you can shamelessly self-promote everything you've got going on.
I love being shameless.
Jody's shameless.
I love it. No, they can go to the website, www.jwbrookscustomhats.com. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. I'm trying to TikTok. I'm struggling with that because how many hours of the day do we have? So
yeah, and you're not a 13-year-old kid.
Right. Yeah, I've got a lot going on, so I'm trying the TikTok thing.
But no, all that information's that's on the website or Facebook, either one.
Yeah, and they're always welcome to call the shop, where we've got a couple of gals that love to talk to you. So they're very helpful. Yeah.
Again, JW Brooks. jwbrookscustomhats.com. The phone number is 817-771-7446. And they are in the country known as Texas, folks. The greatest country in the world.
That's right.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, we really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Huge fan of what
you're
doing. Huge champion for what you do, your mission, and just being the front runner in that space, innovating every day is just so impressive, and just great to get to know you guys. So this has been the Coach Brew podcast. Again, I want to remind you, it's J.W. Brooks and his wife, Jody, and you can go to jwbrookscustomhats.com. Personally, I think it'd be irresponsible of you not to go to the website and check it out. And everybody needs a cowboy hat.
Amen.
I firmly believe that. Everybody needs one. They just don't know it yet, right?
They just don't.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Thanks,
guys. I appreciate you. Stick around. I'm going to stop the recording, but I still want to chat with you for a moment.
Okay.